Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming out on a mostly sunny Saturday afternoon here in Santa Monica, where, as was mentioned, I grew up surfing the beaches, and realized that sometimes it's hard to stay inside on days like this, although it's a little bit cooler today. So, great day to talk about books like Sealab, which I have written. It is I'm going to jump in. Well, let me just say, you guys know the book is called Sealab. America's, I should say that though, for the record, America's Forgotten Quest to Live and Work on the Ocean Floor, which maybe is a little bit of a mouthful, but I was pleased that when the book came out, that subtitle was recognized as Subtitle of the Week by Publishers Weekly. So I took that to be a compliment, and I figured that the main title is kind of short, so it all sort of balances out for the best and tells you what the book's about. I am often asked how I got the idea for this book or where it came from, and so I think I'll just start from the beginning there, and then I will talk about the story of Sealab and introduce you to some of the principal characters. I've got some rare audio and some video to share with you to kind of show you what this was all about. And of course, we'll have time for your questions at the end, which would be great. So if questions occur to you as I'm going along here, hang on to them and be glad to answer them at the end. Sealab was, the seed for Sealab was really planted when I was working not far up the coast here in Santa Barbara for the daily newspaper, and writing about lots of things, different kinds of things in that area, as daily newspaper writers do. And somebody suggested once that I attend a gathering of commercial divers that was going on. There's a big commercial diving community in the Santa Barbara area, and one of them was being feted. A guy named Ladd Handelman, who's actually was a longtime diver and wound up co-founding one of the biggest diving companies in the world. And so the idea was, well, they're having this party at Handelman's place, known fondly as Ladd's Pad in Santa Barbara. So right away I figured this sounded like a place I needed to go, especially when you're on assignment. I mean, how bad could it be? So up to Ladd's Pad and to kind of see what was going on, and the idea being, as it often is, to dredge up some stories for the newspaper. And really what happened was I was in this crowd of old-time commercial divers, most from Southern California and elsewhere, and just wound up hearing all these crazy alien-sounding stories about working underwater and accidents and the weird things that go on when you're underwater, much like when you're out in space, although space is sometimes more familiar to us than working underwater. So I came away from this event thinking, wow, what another world. And one thing that somebody said that really stuck with me was a diver I was talking to, and he spoke of doing very deep dives where the dives were so deep and the gas is so pressurized that it was like breathing peanut butter. And I just thought, what? Breathing peanut butter? What is that about? I mean, that sounds completely sci-fi, weird. I don't understand that. So kind of filed that away. I never did wind up writing about this party for the papers, I recall, but it was a lovely evening, though, and met a lot of nice people and actually got some connection for some other stories. So in case any of my old bosses are watching, it wasn't completely time squandered up there. Not just drinking up there at Ladd's Pad with the old commercial divers. And so I had also at that time gotten it in my head that I'd like to take on a work of book-length nonfiction. I'd done, the newspaper style, feature writing, and journalism, and to the lengths that are allowed for that format. And so I was kind of on the lookout for ideas that might be worthy of a book-length story, and you can kind of see where I'm headed now. So that when I got out of the daily newspaper business and we restructured our family and moved back east, I basically went to the library and with my idea that had vaguely to do with deep diving, commercial diving, weird stuff that goes on underwater. So I'm starting to do searches on these things. And the name Sealab starts popping up. I thought, wow, Sealab, what's that? That sounds pretty fascinating and interesting. There must be at least several books about this. So first thing I should do is find out what's been written so far about it. And the answer was really nothing had been written about it. And this was sort of mind-blowing, because how could, if this thing was, here's a U.S. Navy project in the 1960s, pioneering underwater science exploration, where's the book? And what I found mainly were a couple of memoirs that had been written by key participants who we'll meet in just a moment here. And those were great background, but nobody had sort of put all the pieces together here of what Sealab was, what it meant, and its legacy that's with us here today in terms of what people are able to do in the ocean as workers and as researchers and scientists and everything else. So great news for a journalist. I'm just alone in a library somewhere going, hey, I think I got something here, with this Sealab thing. So I started doing the preliminary research, and indeed, Sealab is the focal point of, in much the way the Mercury project was, of an effort to really break some barriers that had existed for a long time, not in the sky in this case, but in terms of human ability to go underwater. So there was that kind of science and exploration aspect of it that was fascinating, and a good sign that there was a story there. And the other was the central character named Dr. George F. Bond, who, seen here in his coonskin cap and trench coat, you might wonder, well, what does this guy have to do with the ocean? Where's the diving gear? Dr. Bond was actually started his career with a rural practice, thus the hat and whatnot, in the backwoods of the Blue Ridge Mountains, serving a small community there. And I'm going to read you just a short piece from the book here to introduce Captain Bond, tell you a little bit about where he came from, and you can kind of see where I found him a fascinating character, already kind of an unlikely one to be somebody who is going to become considered the father of Sealab. This is Bond in the 1940s, and jumping back, George was not quite 10 years old when his father died late in the summer of 1925. But the family could still afford a nanny, summer camps, and private schools. As a teenager at Mercersburg Academy in Pennsylvania, Bond worked on the school's monthly literary magazine and became known as the class poet. He took up pipe smoking as a teen and developed what would become a lifelong fondness for bourbon. His nickname would not have shocked his Navy bosses. His schoolmates called him Rebel. After graduating from Mercersburg in 1933, a few years into the Great Depression, Bond enrolled at the University of Florida. His course list revealed his divided interest between letters and sciences, though he generally did better in classes like Old English and imaginative writing than in general chemistry and histology. His literary side won out, at least initially. Bond earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in early 1939 and went straight into a University of Florida graduate program for a master's degree. He studied English, and for his thesis wrote about the Appalachian dialect spoken around Bat Cave, a hamlet in the Blue Ridge Mountains about 10 miles from the family's summer home at Chestnut Gap, near Hendersonville in western North Carolina. Bond had gotten to know the speck of a town named for a nearby cavern that was a seasonal home to migrating bats when he went to summer camps in the area after his father died. In those formative years, George, his older sister, and brother had continued to live with their mother, Louise Foote Bond, a stern, college-educated woman as the family moved between DeLand, Florida, where Bond mostly grew up, although the family was originally from Ohio, and the more modest home at Chestnut Gap. Bond loved the rocky and wooded back roads around Bat Cave and neighboring hamlets like Chimney Rock and Bear Wallow. He spent many lazy days hiking, horseback riding, and fishing with his two best friends, Lonnie Hill and Homer Lafayette Fate Haydock. Both were products of far less privilege and formal education, but that made no difference to Bond. Fate himself served as one of Bond's 15 master's thesis subjects and helped Bond gather documentary material. Bond made notes on distinctive words, pronunciations, and such Appalachian pearls as, "I'll take no back sass off'n you," and "my popskull mash went blinky on me." Bond was inspired by the simple rustic ways of the mountain people and their independence. As a kid, he once lived with Ben and Doogie Connor for the better part of a month at their ramshackle place on Bear Branch, a little tributary near the head of the Broad River. Ben Connor was quiet and removed, but Doogie, his